So, welcome everyone for joining us today. Folks will be trickling in as we get started here, but thank you so much for joining us for our webinar for local producers. We're really excited today to be co-hosting this with Mississippi Farm to School Network and the DeSoto County Schools, Child Nutrition Department. This project, our webinars for local producers, has been a project that's been funded at least in part by the United States Department of Agriculture. And we're just thrilled to be able to talk to you today about procuring local foods and how to bring local foods into school districts. Next slide, please. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the Urban School Food Alliance. So my name is Dottie Arnold, and I work with the Urban School Food Alliance. And we're a nonprofit membership association that was founded in 2012. And our work really centers around identifying and lifting up best practices, preferred procurement strategies, and resources. Now, our primary work, as you'll see on this slide, is focused on the nation's largest school districts, but this project that we've been working on with the USDA is for districts of all sizes. And so we've really, with these webinars, been working across the country to host this conversation around procurement for areas and districts of all sizes, as well as producer organizations of all sizes. And so our work with partners throughout the US really is with this project, is bringing school districts and producers together to kind of work on developing that shared language and build relationships to strengthen school food procurement. And so we're really thrilled to be hosting this webinar today with the Mississippi Farm to School Network. And I'd love to turn it over to them to just talk a little bit about the great work that they're doing and introduce their team here with us today. So Sydney, I'll pass it to you.
Hi, everyone. On behalf of the Mississippi Farm to School Network, thanks for joining today, and thanks to the Urban School Food Alliance for hosting this webinar specifically for Mississippi producers. For those of you that don't know, we are a statewide nonprofit that serves children and families all throughout the state of Mississippi with the goal to connect local farmers with school cafeterias to increase access of fresh, nutritious, locally grown food for children, communities, and families throughout the state. We do this by providing technical assistance to child nutrition departments, early care education providers, and to producers like yourselves. We also provide a host of resources. We host webinars like this, trainings, events, um, and have a few ongoing programs throughout the year. Two resources/programs that I wanted to highlight today. If you can go to the next slide, Lev. Um, First is the Harvest of the Month program that was just launched. Um, you can scan this QR code here. And this provides 12 months of resources. Each month highlights a different local produce that is in season for that month and provides educational activities for all ages. And they're categorized by different age groups around that highlighted local produce item. So we thought this would be a great way to bolster local procurement, great way for folks to get started. And if you're a producer and you want to check out these resources and you know that you produce some of the items on the list, please let us know because we will be offering to connect schools with farmers to find that item of the month. Another resource we wanted to highlight was a Farm Fresh map. Lev, if you could go to the next slide. This is what it looks like right now on our website, but we are in the process of revamping it so that it's a bit more sophisticated, but still user-friendly and very interactive. So eventually farms will be able to add their own information, update their information, and school districts will be able to find producers in their area, and you'll be able to see what they can produce. But the current map is live at the QR code there. And you can contact Mary Jo at Mississippi Farm to School to get added. Also want to introduce some of my team members who are on. If you want to just come on camera and give a wave. I see Mary Jo Conley.
Hi everyone, please message me with your forms. I would love to add them.
Great. And then Umi's on the call as well.
Hey everyone, based here on the coast, but always happy to connect with new farmers. So you're welcome to reach out to any member of the Mississippi Farm to School Network team. Good to see all of you.
Great. Thanks, y'all.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sydney and the team for that great introduction. And Lev, we'll have you go to the next slide, please. So today we have some really great presenters, which we're really excited about. Jeremy is going to kick us off talking about procurement from the lens of the Urban School Food Alliance, and then we're going to have Alex Hallmark as well. We're thrilled to have you here with us today, Alex, and I will pass it to Jeremy.
And thank you, Dottie. Appreciate that. And thank you to Mississippi Farm to School Network for hosting this webinar. We've been doing these around the country over the past couple of years. And, you know, what an asset. Not every state has a support system like Mississippi Farm to School, that nice public-private partnership. And so kudos to you. And that's such an asset for all along the supply chain for farm to school, whether you're a person buying the food or a person selling the food. So thanks for being part of this today. And thanks for your time, each of you that are on here today. I'm Jeremy West. I'm the Chief of Finance and Operations with Urban School Food Alliance, but I'm also a former school food service director and worked in 3 different districts in Colorado, where I'm based. And so during my time, when I first became a director, farm to school was new in Colorado. We had 1 or 2 districts doing some things. I became a director in a district north of Denver called Greeley-Evans School District 6, and they had bought 1 crop of cherry tomatoes. So from that, we were able to build our farm to school capacity to buying over $100,000 in produce annually around our state. I see my internet is unstable, so let me know, Dottie or somebody, if you're not hearing me. I'm in a hotel in Chicago currently, and there's a storm. So if all else fails, we'll just drop my photo here in a little bit. So, but anyway, also got to serve on the Colorado Farm to School Task Force. The task force served from 2010 to 2015 in the nation at the time, working on farm to school. And so we got to put a lot of framework in for Colorado. So today we really want to focus on a little challenging sometimes. So we're going to start on the next slide and really talk about why does farm to school matter? And I'll go ahead and just cut my photo. You don't need to see me. It's all right. See if that helps. I don't want it to be too choppy there. Kids win. And when we say that, we know that farm to school products, they've traveled less than most general food products. So they're healthier. They're more nutrient dense. They've been harvested closer to the time that they're going to be eaten. And it really helps kids connect with where food comes from. I've worked in some very agricultural counties, and my students didn't know where some of their food came from. If you asked them where they would get a watermelon or potatoes, they would say Walmart or the grocery store. They didn't understand that those things were being grown right around the corner from some of our schools. And so helping them connect is good for them. It's good for them to see this variety of things that are grown in their own area. Our communities win. When we have investments in farm to school and local procurement, we keep local dollars local. So these schools are primarily funded through federal dollars, sometimes some state dollars. Let's keep those dollars local by putting them back into our food system. And of course, farmers win. We've found that farm to school can be that a new market for some, and it's a stable market. Schools, guess what? Kids have to have a fruit or a vegetable on their tray every day. And so every day, our nutrition folks are looking to procure these items. And it really helps our farmers connect to their community. We've had students that said, oh, they recognize that farm logo. Maybe we put that on the salad bar. And so when they've gone to a farmer's market in the community, they're taking parents over there to say, hey, I had their carrots and can we buy some? And so we know that that is a win for our farmers as well. We'll go to the next slide. Talk a little bit more about Farm to School. There was a census done, I think the last one was in 22, 23, and really asking SFAs, means school food authorities, how are you using local food? There's a lot of child nutrition programs. So you'll see here that first one, NSLP, National School Lunch Program. That's a big driver of using local food. Also in our breakfast program, not quite as much, but still strong, SVP. FFVP is Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program. This is a competitive grant program in states. In one of my districts where I had, about 30 schools, I had about 10 of my schools that were on FFVP. And this provides a fresh fruit or vegetable snack anytime between the bell of the school day. This was a great way. I used to buy a lot of local for this because it was a smaller buy, which helped some of my growers. They could be a little intimidated by my volume. But also sometimes I was able to feature items that I couldn't quite afford to maybe put on my salad bar every day, but I could afford to have this one-off, really feature it for students. And it comes with nutrition education. We would educate them about this. So pomegranates were a great example. Not something we would put on the salad bar every day because of cost, but having it in our FFVP was a win for students to be able to learn about that and experience something new. And then our child and adult care food programs. This would be some of those supper programs that you might see schools offer. They use it quite a bit there. And as well as that last one, SFSP and SSO, those refer to our summer feeding programs. In Colorado, especially, that's, towards the end of, mid-July and on, that's when we have some of our most bountiful harvest in our state. And so it's nice to be able to incorporate it into those programs as well for students in the summer. All right, we'll go to the next slide. Again, some of the things that we hear, you see a good quote here by Dr. Wilson, who's our executive director, but what are some of the values being placed when we think about food being purchased for schools? And what we hear from a lot of our members and food service directors around the country, they really like the sustainability of it, right? This is helping sustain their local economy, but also the growing practices of that. Of those operators are often very sustainably grown food. And so they enjoy that. The educational opportunities that come with this. We want students not to just be able to recognize food, but we can use Farm to School in so many different ways to teach them other subjects too. And I say Farm to School, this can include school gardens as well. And so having those educational opportunities where students can visit a farm or have information provided to them about how things are grown is really valuable to students' learning experience. They enjoy the community engagement. This is always a win for school districts when they can promote that they are putting local fresh items on their menus. Parents like that, students like that, it's a win for the community. That's really a commitment to producers of all sizes. There's no, you're not too small or too large to sell to schools. And so we know that everyone can be involved in this. We partnered a few years ago with the National Farm School Institute. So we have a best practices publication. We'll share some resources at the end, but that's a good one to look at. Now I want to bust a few myths on the next slide. Some things that we commonly hear. I have a small farm, or some people say I have a large farm, so I can only sell to small schools, or I have a large farm and I can only sell to large school districts. So let me tell you, sometimes right sizing that way makes a lot of sense. But there are, because of third-party distribution, because oftentimes those larger districts, they may not be trying to procure the full crop just from your farm. They may have other farms available to them, or they may supplement that with commercially available products if they have to. But just know that small farms can sell to big districts. We see that in a lot of our member districts, and that large farms, small schools do want to connect with you as well. And food hubs, co-ops, I don't know the Mississippi landscape as well, but I think there are some of those options available in your state. The next myth is local is defined by USDA. In fact, it's not. About a year ago, I think it was May of last year, USDA did come up with a clarification of local and basically reminded districts that they needed to create their own definition of local. And they should be aware that maybe their state, if your state has local purchasing incentives, for example, in Colorado, if you're buying a certain percentage of Colorado grown or produced products, there's some cents per meal that you can apply for that helps you feed your students. So it may make sense to align with that, but really it's up to you as the school districts. And so if you're a grower on this or working with a co-op, understand what the definition of local is for the districts that you want to work with. It could be Mississippi grown. It could be within a certain mile radius, or it could be a combination of both. I told you I worked in Greeley. Greeley's at the top of Colorado, only about 40 miles from Cheyenne, Wyoming. My fruit that I wanted to procure was about 400 miles away on the western slope. But I also had the opportunity to reach into Nebraska, Kansas, Wyoming. And so when I was in Greeley at the time, it was local as anything Colorado grown or within 400 miles of my warehouse where I would receive the food at. And so just understand that. And if directors are on here, just know that you have to specify that at the time you're releasing your bid specification. That has to be clearly defined. And you can do that in a couple of ways. Sometimes you'll see this in the actual specification of the food. So as I've written the specification for the food product, they'll write it in there. More often than not, especially if it's a request for a proposal, RFP, they'll put that in the scoring of that. And so they can award a certain additional amount of credits or points given to those local unprocessed agricultural products as they evaluate that. So look for that in the bid solicitation, and that will help you, become preferred when it comes time to award those bids for the school year. So let's talk about on the next slide, what is procurement? Well, it's really about the process of buying. School districts have to follow local, state, federal regulations, and they have to make sure that all purchases, not just farm to school, but everything they purchase are properly stewarded through the process so that they can, expend their taxpayer funds appropriately. And so it's really that broad framework. It's those pre-bid meetings. It's that solicitation or that bid document. It's the release of that. It's the process of it and the awarding of that. Versus purchasing. Purchasing is part of procurement process, but it's the end of it. It's when we actually come to say, hey, I need X many cases or X many pounds of tomatoes delivered on this date so I can serve it to students. So that applies to local. That applies to every purchase they make. Another resource you see on the screen is our Sourcing Locally Toolkit. That's a great interactive guide. You can go to your state and click through it. This is like one of those Digizine tools, and find resources available in your neck of the woods. So I encourage you to check that out after the webinar today. All right, let's go to our next slide. And as we do that, I just want to encourage you, as we talk through some steps for success. Some of you may have been doing farm to school or farm to institution. So if you wouldn't mind just putting in the chat some of your best tips or steps for success, or maybe you have a barrier that you've been facing and you would like some help figuring that out, we'd welcome that as well. And we're gonna have some time at the end of the call to really take some questions. So please stick around for that. But I want to invite you to do that as we head into the steps for successful implementation of farm growers and producers. So on the next slide, first of all, let's start with preparation. Just like you would go and plan for your crops for the year and get your soil ready, there's some preparation that needs to go into selling to schools. Again, it's a little different. It's different than farmers markets. It's different than retail. So really, first of all, and we're going to dive a little bit into the food safety plan, but make sure you have implemented and documentation of a food safety plan. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But also understand school food procurement processes. So in smaller districts, sometimes it is you're dealing directly with kitchen managers or nutrition directors or nutrition managers. They have a variety of titles. So find the right person and understand that. In larger districts, often this goes through a procurement department and that's within the district, but more at the district level. So, and know that they have to, depending on the level of purchase, there's different thresholds, and there's micro purchasing we call, there's small purchases, and each of those, it's helpful to kind of understand some of the things that come with that and the dollar amounts. So, and it can vary by district. There's certainly federal guidance on that, federal regulation, but state and district regulations could be more strict than that. So understand that. Oftentimes that information is on a district's website. And then determine the right fit for your operation. Now, I don't mean necessarily you're a small farm and I want a small district. That could be part of it. But just understand, do you have the kind of products that they're looking to buy? Are you able to meet their delivery demands? I worked in a district that had a centralized warehouse, so it was pretty easy for local producers to bring all of their products to one spot. A lot of districts don't have that opportunity, and so they may need you to stop at 3, 4, 5, 6 places. Can you do that? So understand if they're a good fit for you. And then also be ready to help create marketing materials. One thing, and I just say a lot of districts, especially bigger ones, they will have public relations folks and people that can do the creative work. But what they need is they'd love to have a photo of your farm or your farm family or some of the things that you actually grow. So you don't necessarily have to create the marketing materials as the seller, but have some resources available and be a good partner with your district. So because they really want to promote your farm. It's all good and well to have this great fresh produce on there that is all local, but if students don't know it's purchased locally, we've missed an opportunity. Build that relationship. Again, get to the right person. Maybe that's the food service director. Small districts, it could be the superintendent. I mean, my kids go to a district of 400 kids. And so we have great cafeteria staff, but they're not necessarily in charge of procurement. And so getting to the right person matters. Visit that district. When's the last time you had school lunch or breakfast? If it's been a while, you may want to check it out. It's different. And so I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. Also, if you can, invite folks to your farm. Now, we're not doing this when the bid's open, right? We need to do this outside of a buying opportunity. But as you're building those relationships, make sure you're taking time to get to know who the buyers are and understand the menu and how you fit in. Most districts, by and large, have those menus posted on a website. And so understanding what their menu is, most of them are following a cycle menu, meaning that it repeats itself every 2, 3, 4 weeks. And so understanding where the opportunities are can be helpful as you think about what you have to offer. And then I would just encourage you to start small. It'll take a little bit to get used to the rhythm of schools and how things work and how to deliver and get that there and communicate well. So just start small, but get your foot in the door. Next slide. Keep it going. You want to build upon your successes, continue to communicate and educate. Knowledge is power. Don't be afraid to ask for information on types and amounts of products purchased. What are they usually pay for it? Educate them on how you like to sell it. You may do bushels and pounds, and our directors have only ever bought cases and piece counts. So just have that communication and help educate the buyer and be willing to receive some from them as well. And offer assistance. There'll be a knowledge gap, but offer to spend some time and some training. Those field trips, if you have any value-added things, make them aware of that. If you have some specialty crops, I always talk about Farmer Anthony. He was my main farmer when I was in Greeley. He wanted to try the specialty crop of pinto beans. And I bought a lot of beans from Anthony. We made our own homemade from scratch burritos, and that was one of the products were pinto beans from his farm. So he grew some really cool multicolored speckled beans. I didn't want to hide that in a burrito, so we actually did a great salad for the salad bar. But that was him coming to me ahead of that saying, I want to try this. He gave me a good price on because he'd not grown those before. And so we partnered together to feature that on Colorado Proud School Meal Day, which we have usually first part of September here. And so that was a good opportunity for us to connect and really just promote something a little different. All right, our next slide. I'm going to just end with food safety, and then we're going to get it over to Alex so you can kind of hear how farm to school is happening in your neighborhood. But just want you to know everybody has a role in this. It certainly starts with our growers and producers, and what you do on the farm matters. And you know that. As you sell to many markets, we know that you want to sell safe food. You're selling to children when it comes to schools. And so we have to make sure as directors, do our due diligence to make sure that our food supply is safe. Schools have a role. After they receive that product, now it's on their plate to monitor that and make sure that it's being handled appropriately and that they have the standard operating procedures in place to appropriately handle that fresh produce. Of course, our legislative, our regulatory agencies that oversee this, that create the laws, and those that inspect to make sure that things are happening as they should, whether that's on the farm or in transit or in our schools. And of course, during distribution, whether that's distribution from farm to the district or from the district out to their schools. We all have a role in that. And it's a very important one as we think about farm to school. Our next slide. For producers in particular, it's a concern when they have from buying local sources, particularly if the school's not done this before. They're used to buying produce from a traditional vendor, and that vendor, they take the liability of that. They make sure the food is safe. They have their own processes. When they're now buying directly from a farm, our directors have to think that through, and they have to take some of that liability of how do I ensure that this food is safe for my consumption by my students. And so having that food safety plan, that HACCP plan, you may have heard it called, or a food safety plan, just having that ready and documented, knowing that you're following good food safety practices, good handling practices, and understand that some districts may have additional food safety requirements. So just, again, as you converse with those that are buying the food, make sure you understand that. And your documentation, you may need to provide that entire plan. You may need to provide particular pieces of that just to make sure that we have evidence of a documented safety plan. And of course, our schools have to ensure this, that everything they purchase, how they handle it, any raw agricultural products. Some districts, when I did my change in Greeley and we brought in a lot more fresh foods, we really had to help our staff learn how to deal with that. They'd only ever had pre-bagged lettuce, and now I'm giving them heads of lettuce that came in with sand and some worms, and we had to get salad spinners and triple wash that. And so just helping staff understand there might be a little bit more that you have to do, but in the long run, it's worth it. And so helping schools have to make sure that their staff are trained in how to use these items. And just know that there are some entities that can help with this as well. I've found some great resources in our local extension agencies. Also, our state agencies, local health inspectors have offered training in some areas, and other nonprofit organizations. Again, our nonprofits do a lot of sponsoring things like this webinar to help really support the work. All right, now our next slide, and then we're going to turn it over to Alex. Just some things, what I listed here, I'm not a scientist. When I was a food service director, I'm a food service director. Some things, and I look at that GAP, Good Agricultural Practices, and that's a pretty intense process to get through. It is the preferred model in most areas, but it can be expensive. And so what I would do is really talk to my growers about things that I could understand. How do you use soil additives? What are your water sources? I would go visit the farm, see if they had hygiene stations. Did they have a place for workers to wash their hands, to use the restroom? How were they harvesting? Did they have bins? One grower I worked with needed better harvest boxes. They were bringing some things in cardboard boxes that I didn't think were quite appropriate. And so I had some grant money. And so we worked together to get those collapsible plastic bins. They would harvest the product, bring it in those bins to my central warehouse that had a full-scale kitchen. So we would disperse that, and then we could wash all of those and store them for the next time. So, work those things out. I needed to understand, how they harvested, when they did that. And of course, if I was doing anything with meats, eggs, poultry, some things have to be, go through a USDA certified facility. And so we would, of course, only do that if those things were in place. Oftentimes that method of traceability can be important. Again, just from the director's perspective, we're offered that with a traditional vendor. And so that's nice. If something were to happen, and we've had some good examples of produce gone awry here lately, right? Being able to trace that back and understand if we have any of that in our system, it's just really important, especially in those larger district systems. Maintaining compliance with local health department and regulatory validators. So, that would be something I would want to know when I was developing new relationships with my growers. How, have you been inspected? Can I see those reports? School districts, a lot of times, some states and municipalities, we have to post those right on the door, how we did, and have it available to the public. So it's not an unreasonable request to just make sure that, I like to take people at their word, but I also need to verify that what they're saying, that we have evidence of that too. And then provide, have some evidence that you're providing food or employee safety training. And I would just say this is a great opportunity to just really connect with your district. Guess what? All year long, or at least annually, they're providing food safety and employee safety training to their staff. Nutrition staff have to have professional standards, a certain amount of hours they get each year in education. And so this might be an opportunity that you could partner with your school district that's already providing some training, or maybe they would provide you with some of the written materials that you could use with your staff right on the farm. And so I think that's a good overview of kind of the grower's role when we think about food safety. All right, we'll go to the next slide. And now let's get to the star of the show. Alex is here, and we're thankful that she is to tell us about DeSoto County schools and their journey on farm to school. And then after that, we'll share some resources and give you time for questions. So Alex, take it away.
Hey everyone, and thank you for having me, Mississippi Farm to School Network. So my dad, he's retired now, but he was a farmer. So farming has kind of always been rooted into where I came from. However, his biggest rule was like, you will not marry a farmer, and he never wanted us on the farm because he didn't want us getting attached to the farm. So he was like, I don't want you to do this life. So anyway, to my farmers out there, I do understand, and I have a soft heart for when farmers approach me and they're like, hey, how can I get this into your schools? I'm always trying to figure out, okay, how can we do this? And so you can do next slide. So when I first became a director, so I've been here 12 years, a director for 11. I was gung-ho, like I was doing farmer school, and I was telling them earlier, I cannot even remember, but it was a co-op group that was able to connect with farmers. And they're like, I can get you some watermelons. And I was like, yes, get us some watermelons. And they're like, we'll deliver them to the office. I'm not even like thinking like how these things are going to be delivered. This was my first go at it. And they come in a trailer, and they've got the boxes that you see at the grocery store full of watermelons getting ready to go to my schools. And I was like, how am I going to get these to my schools? Anyway, so it was a great lesson, and we got them to the schools, and the kids love them. But what I quickly found out was that, wasn't sustainable, obviously. And so, and that's just one of the many kind of hurdles that a school has to kind of deal with when it comes to partnering with farms. A little bit about my district. So I am quite different than most school districts in Mississippi. DeSoto County is 8 entities all made into one. So like where other counties would have 8 different school districts, we're all one school district. So we have got 41 school sites, 24 elementaries feeding into 8 middles, and then 8 high schools, and then 1 alternative school. No central kitchen. We do have a warehouse, but only like a backup warehouse. So not really, I don't have a warehouse manager that is able to move food and product. I have area supervisors that work for me that cover their areas, and they're a support, but they're also seasoned women, and lifting 10 and 15-pound watermelons in and out of a vehicle and onto a back dock is challenging. So from that standpoint, so I just totaled our meals from last year, and we did 4.8 million meals last year, which really proud of. And we operate school lunch program, of course, school breakfast, after school snacks, CACFP, and summer feeding. So we do not participate in the fresh fruit and vegetable program. And I can't tell you really why. It's just, I've I've pushed it out to my administration, and I've just never had any like pushback anybody wanting to participate. So, and without their buy-in, it's really hard to do. Next slide. So I'm going to go into what we're currently doing and then talk about what we have done. So at the end of last year, we ended up doing procured for hydroponic farming. I worked with curriculum directors and got a feel for my elementary schools and the interest that they would have if I provided them a flex farm. Would they grow items that our cafeteria could use during serving? Now, obviously, these farms do not fully supply like what is needed, but I wanted to grow that connection between the student and the farm and what they're eating, and not only just to connect the farmer and the school, but also just connect kids with fruits and vegetable consumption. We see that's the item that they have to pick up. All of my schools operate offer versus serve, so we don't do any plated meals. But every day, when they think of the cafeteria, all they think of is you got to have a fruit or a vegetable. You got to have a fruit or a vegetable. You got to have, and we see that the kids really do gravitate towards items that are more fresh. They love all varieties of apples, and they love oranges, and they love when we do a charcuterie box and it's full of grapes and kiwi, and we implemented like this kind of like spin on Chick-fil-A fresh fruit cup last year, and that was a huge hit. So they love color and they love that. And so this was a way to kind of bring that to the classroom and then back to the cafeteria. And so by the time the procurement process was over with, we only got the farms to the classrooms right after spring break. So we only got one harvest out of most of the farms. Some didn't even embark on it, and we're going to wait till this year. And the easiest thing to start on was lettuce. And so in my next slide, you can see the buy-in. We took the lettuce at the schools that produced it and made salads, and it wasn't enough salads for the whole day. One farm wasn't even able to produce enough lettuce to do side salads for a whole meal, but we ensured that the class that got to grow it got the salads, and then allow the rest of the students to get it. But this is just a snippet of what we're trying to do, and we've we started school last week, so we've already got classrooms already getting ready to plant. We've got some planting tomatoes, some starting back on lettuce. And so we're excited to see with all 38 this year where we're going to go. And we have more that we can implement. So our goal this year is to kind of get these moving along, get kind of like a schedule going, but also add more flex farms. Next slide. What we've done and had huge success with. We had fresh burgers, beef patties from Home Place Pastures. We procured those through a bid that locked in pricing, and we worked out where they did deliver them to our central warehouse here because we do have a freezer, and my area supervisors took them out to schools, and we had them every other week. So they were taking them out to schools every week, but not to every school. So we rotated between middle school and high school and elementary. So they weren't delivering to, so many sites every week. We also, things we had to work out, like their original case of how they are delivering to like Whole Foods and or restaurants was a larger case and a larger patty. And so we had to work with them to create a patty that size that we needed, which was they were very willing to work with us, could not recommend them enough, and also reduced the weight of the case so that it was more manageable for my staff to transport and move around. So we were able to feature this on the menu like once or twice a month, depending how it fell. Reason that we are currently not doing it is obviously when beef prices skyrocketed, or when beef skyrocketed, it skyrocketed beef prices, and they weren't able to hold on to our bid pricing. And so we haven't gone back through the bid pricing in order to secure pricing. But we have had conversations, and we're looking to try to maybe do a beef pork mixture to bring down the price to be able to implement this again. We have a little bit of time. So I will say some people have been like, well, how do you cook these patties? It's a raw patty coming into the school. So we developed a way of putting them on the sheet pan and putting a liner and then topping it with another sheet pan that kept the patties smushed and together. And we were able to bake them that way. And that was how we were able to cook those patties. Adobe Farms is a local farm here in DeSoto County. They have like sausage and sausage links and breakfast sausage. So our first time to implement them was we just did quotes, and because what we were purchasing was under the threshold, and we were able to feature their breakfast sausage during school breakfast week in March, and then we procured some sausage links that we featured in our sausage and cheese bento box, and so that was another successful. And both are meats. I feel like sometimes meats are sometimes easier because they can be frozen and then thawed. And then this was prior to COVID. We had a huge success, and COVID ended this partnership. And this company, whoever was over the farm, was just bought out. But they had a huge hydroponic farm that produced English cucumbers, and they did some tomatoes. Tomatoes weren't always available, but when we could get cherry tomatoes, we would. But cucumbers, we had a weekly delivery of cucumbers, and they were the best, freshest English cucumbers. They were so good, and so we did all kinds of things with them, and that was very successful. So we've had other little local farmers like Banks Rice we've partnered with and procured their rice, but it's white rice and it's really hard to fit that into the menu and with the 80% grain requirement. My biggest lesson in learning is, I do this job and I think 35,000 students, 41 sites, 35,000 students, 41 sites. And what I've come to learn is when it comes to farm to school, it's not 35,000, 41 sites. It's figuring out what the farmer can supply. And so if I've got an Olive Branch farmer that can only supply X amount of servings, then my Olive Branch schools would be the one that got it. And I would do that for those Olive Branch schools, and that would only be 6 schools that they had to deliver to. So it reduces, how many sites that they have to make a drop. Or if I've got, a farm on the west side of the county that would, want to do, watermelon or cantaloupe or berries or something, anything, that we would do it that way. And do more of like area farm to school than trying to look at it as a whole. The only thing to keep in mind is as a whole is your procurement thresholds is, even though I'm only servicing a certain area of my county, I've still got to keep up with meeting the threshold. And predicting if I'm going to go over that threshold to get ahead of it in time to get a bid out, because that process takes, I always say 60 days by the time you get it board approved, your period, your question period, pricing in, board approved again, and then can work out a plan to even get it to your schools. So 60 days is that's like hitting every deadline. For my farmers that are in here, if they're farmers in here, stay in contact with directors, have a lot of these things that Jeremy's discussed and that I've discussed, kind of like speed bumps, tackled by the time you speak to a director. A lot of times this time of year, I will have farmers reach out to me, and this is like a very, very busy time of year, August and September. But it's also the time that we're also thinking about October, which is Farm to School Month, and we're wanting to get those fresh foods into our schools to highlight them during that month. And so, having those things already addressed and a plan for those things would be a huge winner, for a director when scheduling a meeting with them. And I'm also going to add, visiting the farms. We visited all these farms, and I think that was a huge. We were able to set aside time, visit the farm. We weren't interrupted. It brought questions up. We worked things out, and we're all able to do that on site. And so I highly recommend that, if you can invite a director out or whoever's in charge of procurement and directors, I highly suggest you go visit a farm from wherever you're wanting to procure from. But in the very end, all of it's been a win-win. I have, you can't go wrong with partnering with a local farmer and putting your federal funds back into your community and being able to highlight those on the menu. We're all about marketing our program, because that's the generation we're feeding. We are feeding the generation that is going to eat whatever TikTok is telling them to eat, or whatever their social media is telling them to do. And so getting on that train and getting on the marketing train. So my farmers having that marketing piece already solved, where I don't have to come up with it, have it for me, ready to send out. That's another plus. So, and my directors, I guess my last name is really what we've learned is it's not about asking farmers to fit our program, but trying to build it, like I said, around what the farmers can supply. So just kind of keep those things in mind when you're building your farm to school, if you haven't started or if you're in the beginning stages.
Thank you so much. That's fabulous. What a great presentation. Liv, can you go to the next slide, please? So we want to have a few minutes for Q&A. I know we had a question in the chat already, and I'll just read that out and then we can respond to that question. So the question is, when are school menus typically developed for the upcoming school year? Are they usually finalized a year in advance to give farmers enough time to plan crops, grow necessary produce, and meet anticipated demand for school food programs?
Alex, I'll respond first, and I appreciate your response too. I would just say this is something I had to learn as a director. So I typically would start my bid season January, February, and that's when I would approach and say, hey, I want to buy some local products. And, finally, some of the farmers folks said, Jeremy, really, when it gets December in Colorado, that's what we do over winter break, is we're looking through the seed catalog and figuring out what we're going to grow next year. So if you really want something of quantity, we need to know like the very start of January at the latest. So that helped me think that through and back that up. As far as when menus are planned, if you've got 500 districts in the room, you might have 500 different answers. They are planned in advance. Bigger districts certainly probably plan those further in advance because they do have to buy more products. But most districts, I think by and large, kind of have a cycle menu. A lot of them follow the semester. So they're probably planning that, 3-4 months ahead of the semester that's coming up. I did mine a little different. I had hot months, cold months. So October through February was my one menu cycle. And then, starting in March, we would end the school year with our hot months menu options, and that would help us when we started the school year. My kitchen managers came back, and the menu they ended in May with students, they knew what to plan for when they got back in August. So it's really helpful for planning. I think another thing to think about is you kind of know what schools are buying for the most part. If they have, we're buying carrots, we're buying apples, we're buying celery, we're buying oranges. So if you have any of those kind of foods that schools would normally buy for their fresh fruit and vegetable offerings, guess what? They need it every day. And so hopefully that they're getting their bid solicitation out in time for you to respond to that. But just know that that's going to be on the menu. It's part of the requirement for students to get their meal. But I think if you want some things if you're wanting kind of that forward contracting relationship, just get to know your food service director and you kind of help them understand the timeline. And I think that they're flexible enough to work around that. But Alex, please chime in on that.
That's what I was about to say. No planning here.
Yeah.
We offer 2 fruits and 2 vegetables every day on the menu. And those are the things that, especially our fruit that, because we may get our produce order in and maybe apples. So then maybe not be up to par and we send them back. So then my team leaders have to improvise and change out that fruit. So I always tell farmers, like, fitting it into my menu is usually not the hard part. I can usually do that. I will say though, knowing as far as creating the partnership and knowing like, okay, when is your harvest? When can I expect this? When do we need to be talking? When do we need to be working this out? Because just depending on what needs to be done, like, if it's going to be over the $10,000 threshold, then we're going to have to do this to bid, and that's 60+ days. but you know, I know a lot of things are kind of harvested towards the end of the summer and into the fall that schools can utilize. And so I would be contacting directors, when you plant and you know what you're planting, and when you kind of have an expectation of when you're going to be harvesting it, and kind of catch them at the end of the school year, beginning of summer, when things are like not so chaotic, and they can kind of, they're stopping and they're thinking about the fall and they're thinking about the school year. Um, but their mind is not on other things too, because, sometimes it's just timing. Sometimes you have time to do that extra thing, and sometimes you don't have time, and it has nothing to do with the farmer and what they're capable of at all. It's about timing.
And sometimes I've had my solicitations ready, but my procurement department was overwhelmed with other things. Like, if they're building new schools or have other big projects, sometimes they're like, yeah, it had to go through that department, and because the district was of size, but it was a little bit about timing on their end as well.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Mississippi is different too. If I've got other states on here, we have our state department manages our food procurement. So most directors do not procure any food. So that's kind of a challenge in Mississippi too, is some directors don't even know how to procure food because they've always participated in our MDE purchasing program and our state's produce purchasing. So, that's kind of another thing that's different about Mississippi is just the food procurement process at all, is we don't do that.
Yeah, that's a good reminder, Alex. That is different in Mississippi, how that's managed. Not a lot of states do it that way. So it's, something that you have to, and I think Mississippi Farm School Network may have some resources on that as well. Just navigating some of that and on both sides. So great question. I thank you also, Melissa, for sharing that resource. I look forward to reading that later as well too.
Do we have any other questions? Folks, feel free to unmute and ask or put in the chat. We still have a couple minutes where we can answer some more questions. Looks like one just came in the chat. So when you run into that challenge of they do not know how to procure, is there any resources to get people started? If so, please add to the chat.
Well, as luck would have it, at least here at USFA for the last 3 years, we've been working on a cooperative agreement all about school food procurement. So if you head to our website, the shameless plug for that, but they're all free resources. Again, we work with the biggest districts in the country, but this is not about that. This is about procurement for districts of all sizes. And so we have a lot of free resources. We've developed trainings. One of them's called the Puzzle Pieces of Procurement, webinars like this as well. You have resources. This one is online. I referenced that earlier, that Digizine about sourcing locally. Check your state agency website always. Sometimes they have particular resources. And then, of course, other nonprofits such as National Farm to School Network, Mississippi Farm to School Network, and others. That there's a lot out there. I had a conversation with somebody today and said there's so much good work going on in Farm to School. I don't think at this point we need to rewrite anything. We just got to figure out who's doing what and find those best practices. So that's what we've really tried to do with our procurement work over the last 3 years, is glean those best practices. And there'll be more that comes out as we finalize our work with the cooperative agreement over the coming months too. Looks like somebody else is putting in some resources too. Thank you. I appreciate that.
That's what I was going to add. Don't reinvent the wheel because somebody has already done it. And you can usually just take their wording and take what they've done and change out your school district and addresses and contact information, and so don't start from scratch because there's plenty of resources. And I know the Mississippi Farm to School Network has a whole resource guide on procuring, and even I'm pretty sure like a template for writing your own bid.
And if you would appreciate additional training, let us know, or let our sponsor know, Mississippi Farm School Network too, because that's important for us to hear that as we think about the future and what training needs to be developed.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes, Morris.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, there. Well, I think I'm on it. Can y'all see me on camera? Oh no.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm Morris Hodges, owner of Morris Watermelon Farm LLC, small specialty crop farm here in Mound Bayou, Mississippi. I'm very fond of Mississippi Farming School. They do a great job, Ms. Women Sydney and the whole staff. And I followed them for probably 6 years or so. I've been doing this about 8 now. But anyway, I wanted to say great webinar and very informative because I'm my destiny. I said this farm school before. I've been procuring through U.S. Department of Agriculture the past 3-4 years through the local food purchases program. Anyway, my destiny has to on school procurement school districts. The reason I'm saying that is because I have 2 high school employees, 2 elementary employees, middle school, and 1 elementary. So they plant, we prep, me and another old schooler like myself, we prep, they plant. So great this webinar. It has been very informative. And I will be in touch with Mississippi Farm to School, again, Ms. Orton and Ms. Sydney and the staff to get a procurement contract or deal with the school district here. So thank y'all. Excellent webinar. I appreciate it. I have to go now because I got to go get it. I got another one at work, Youth Department called the Beginning Farmers at Ranch. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you. I appreciate hearing about that.
So
Thinking about
much.
teams and that.
Great to
That's
see you,
amazing.
Mr. Hodges.
Yeah.
All righty. I got to go on
Thank you.
USDA's Beginning Farmers webinar now. But thank y'all again.
Liv, could you go to the next slide, please? And next slide. So before we wrap up here, and there's still time for folks to put questions in the chat, I put in a feedback form. We would love to hear from you about today's webinar, and there's a space for you to ask additional questions, and just if there's additional training that you would like on this subject matter, please click on that form in the chat. But these are some resources. We'll make sure that you get this PowerPoint, as well as this recording will be made public, and once it's made public on YouTube, we'll send it to Mississippi Farm to School, and then you can have access to this link to view the webinar and have just to be able to reference it. So these are resources that we found are useful, including the Mississippi Farm Fresh map as well. The USDA Farm to School resources, there's Bringing the Farm to School. It's an actual training program for agricultural producers that's put together by the National Farm to School Network. So it's a big, big resource. We highly encourage you checking that out. And there's just some other resources from the National Association of State Departments of Ag, and then our resource link as well. So feel free to use this resource page, and you can scan the QR code as well to visit our resources tab at our website. But thank you so much for being here, and for our speakers today and our co-hosts. Thank you so much. And again, we hope to hear from you. If you have any future questions, just feel free to reach out to us, and have a great rest of your week, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alex, and thanks, Sydney and team.
Yeah. Great to see everyone.